This is actually very important. So if you guys have noticed, drip drops has been clogging the blockchain. So many people are withdrawing their tokens in combination with NFT drops. We're reaching 100% sometimes. So we can go look at pool.pm real quick. If you guys want to know what the blockchain is actually at, you can do that very easily by going to pool.pm. And exactly, ladies and gentlemen, 70% load in the last hour in each block, right? So there's a limit on the amount of data in each block that we can have. And this is what we're going to be talking about today, is SundaeSwap. They're really trying to talk about their launch and then also talk about some issues we may run into on the Cardano blockchain. And I can't really blame them, because seeing this happen with NFT drops and drip drops, we're reaching the limit on these blocks without side chains. And Cardano is being pretty slow and steady on increasing the block size, so we'll see what SundaeSwap has to say. We've been pretty quiet with our heads down preparing for mainnet launch. You can expect a very exciting announcement in the next few days. In the meantime, there's something that we wanted to discuss first. As we approach SundaeSwap's mainnet launch, the team at SundaeSwap Labs believes it's important to educate our community on some of the expected operational constraints and limitations that the blockchain and the DEX will exhibit on opening day and through the first weeks after launch. The Cardano blockchain was designed for global reach and penetration, achieving consensus on transactions across the world in seconds, and engaging people from all economic backgrounds with the weight of that responsibility. Cardano has always operated by a measuring twice and cutting once. This mantra has resulted in the initial parameters of the blockchain being set conservatively at present. With examples of real-world traffic, IOG carefully increase these parameters over time, with the latest being the 12.5% parameter bump we saw last month. During our testnet event, the team noticed a large backlog of processing user transactions. This was partially due to the continued improvements to the Scooper order batching program, but was more due to the current maximum throughput parameters of the Cardano blockchain. So what they're saying here is, there was actually transactions that never went through. And, they're saying, yeah, partially it was due to us and we had to improve some things with the Scooper, but more of it was actually the maximum throughput parameters of Cardano, essentially saying the block size was not large enough to allow for the amount of people that were doing swaps on the testnet. And one thing to keep in mind is this was a testnet launch and we were already hitting the maximum throughput. So I guess we're probably going to get to, hey, we're going to do this on Cardano as well. While this is likely, and also I want to talk about why. Let's say if we're willing to trade like one ADA for one World Mobile token. So when we go to do that, trade one ADA for one World Mobile token, we're going to essentially set up a limit order. And if no one's willing to take that order, especially in that moment, especially when the chain is bogged down and that price isn't there anymore, you'll definitely get a lot more of those limit orders just stuck forever. The congestion is a sign of the Cardano network operating as intended by gradually applying back pressure. This created natural cues so that the Cardano network could absorb this load without crashing or decreasing the security of the ledger. As part of our ongoing discussions with the IOG over protocol parameters, I wonder how that's been. It's pretty hard to discuss parameters with IOG. We've conducted a mainnet load. On the December 18th, the first group transaction can be seen here. Oh, wow. So we've actually got a mainnet scooping transaction. We got to take a look at that real quick. So in this transaction, mainnet. So the way you could actually see mainnet transactions is that ADDR1 right there. So confirm mainnet transaction. And you can see here that looks like we traded some A Ghost for some Buster. Heck yeah, heck yeah. As far as we know, these are the first smart contract-backed automated market maker transactions on the Cardano mainnet. Over the course of the 40-minute load test, a single SundaeSwap scooper performed 139 scoops, which is approximately 3 scoops a minute, which seems pretty low. I mean, we got to admit. This is lower than roughly 7 scoops per minute we saw on mainnet. Additionally, due to low protocol parameters on mainnet compared to testnet. These scoops on average aggregated 3 user operations each. This is lower than the 5 to 8 operations we observed during the SundaeSwap's operation on testnet. With the SundaeSwap DEX quickly approaching its mainnet launch, it's difficult to predict the load during the first week of operation. There are a few things that must be noted. There's a much lower barrier to entry compared to testnet, so there's no need to interact with a faucet, switch to your wallet or testnet. This is a greater incentive to participate in DEX to capitalize on its utility. Yeah, so they're essentially saying that, it's a real DEX that's going to attract more people than people just testing. There is a greater risk of participation since users are exposed to losses of real funds through trading activity. The SundaeSwap DEX must share network bandwidth with our launching protocols themselves, driving additional network demand. Even with all of these factors at play, due to staggering levels of demand and excitement from our community, we expect a large backlog on mainnet as well. Even under the most optimistic predictions, to be transparent as we can, we want to inform you all that while orders may take days to process, including swapping and providing liquidity and withdrawing liquidity. That's pretty rough. Everybody's orders will be processed fairly in the order that they were received and executable. So that's going to be pretty rough because of the price. The price is going to fluctuate so much that, oftentimes you can't wait, a few days for an order. So that kind of seems almost, unusable. It will also be possible to cancel orders at any time before they are processed by scoopers. So at least, if your order doesn't go through, you can cancel it. Although we expect this backlog during the first few days of the protocol, we're very confident the protocol can meet normal day-to-day load once things settle down. Given the size of our community and the excitement around our launch, this initial swell of activity is inevitable. As we saw in the testnet, once scoopers burn through large surges in the backlog, orders for common pools should execute within a few blocks. Because we expect a large backlog during the first few days of the protocol, we will be building out features to inform users on what the current backlog is, what the current throughput is, and where your order roughly stands in queue. So while this demand surge will result in network congestion and longer order processing times, we don't expect this situation to last indefinitely. Eventually, the network will catch up. This will further be improved as IOG implements a planned series of improvements to enhancements to scale the Cardano network capacity through 2022. This includes increases in block size and Plutus script memory units. Other optimization and improvements are in the works that will improve throughput and allow further parameter increases over the long term. These include a new version of Cardano Node, which is the Node software. This is due for mainnet release by IOG in the early January. This has already been released. I'm sure they're talking about 1.33. This will spread staking reward calculations over the whole epoch to improve headroom for overall network performance. That's a huge issue that needed fixed. Another new networking improvement known as pipelining will improve block propagation time significantly. An improvement to the node that allows it to store portions of protocol state to disk will allow nodes to hold less memory, allowing an increased memory limits. Several Cardano improvement probables, CIP 31, 32, and 33, will greatly reduce the size of TXs. Additional improvements to the SundaeSwap DEX will be presented and voted on by the community as part of our commitment to decentralized governments. Layer 2 solutions such as Hydra and others will allow for large portions of the protocol trade volume to be executed faster and cheaper. Thank you for all of our community and your excitement, patience, and support. We have some very exciting news for you all coming soon. So essentially launch is coming soon, but it's going to be a bit slow. That's what we've derived thus far. So SundaeSwap actually commented further on this transaction issue, and this is on old Twitter, SundaeSwap Labs. Now that our article has had time to sit with you, we had some thoughts to share based on your questions. Our post on congestion was intended to provide guidance on what to expect with a mainnet launch. We were delighted to discover how many folks the article reached. With so many new to Cardano, we wanted to provide some more context to limit the inevitable FUD. Yeah, 3 transactions per second. I mean, that's some FUD. Why bother to put the post out? With the size of our community and over 500K TXs on testnet, it was very clear that the congestion would be inevitable as we launch. And it's not even just them. They're trying to say, oh, well, it's us. No, it's just Cardano. Let's be honest here, folks. You know, you're always going to get transparency and honesty from me. We're at a 64% load right now, and this is before SundaeSwaps. If our testnet only had 50K transactions, we could have gotten away without writing a blog post. But why isn't the throughput higher? On any blockchain, throughput is limited by the number of factors: block production rate, transaction size, resource limit. On Cardano, the transaction size is 16K. I think they mean 16 kilobytes, in which includes the data, signatures, and compiled smart contracts. The compiled smart contract represents the vast majority of the space used by the transaction. Around 13K for SundaeSwap and 9K for even a simple order book. Once transactions are no longer required to include compiled code later this year, throughput should increase dramatically. SundaeSwap is an efficient protocol. With testnet parameters, we've seen transactions that include as many as 8 orders attached to them, and we're going to be talking about that, 8 orders. How do they do that? It's going to be very interesting. With only changes to runtime parameters, this could rise as much as 24 orders per TX. Why not use the approach of Team XYZ? While we're always willing to consider alternatives, everything we've seen to date is significantly less efficient on an operations per byte scale using today's parameters. I'm honestly happy to hear this confidence. This gap will become more pronounced as the year advances, as they get more of this utility out there. With the capacity to handle over 100K TX per day, depending on congestion, and another 10K or 10X throughput gain with script features released plus protocol parameter updates, 2022 is looking bright. Ultimately, given your excitement, there is no reasonable amount of time that we could delay that would eliminate day one backlogs. We're confident in being able to meet the real market demand once that initial congestion burns off. We're excited to launch this protocol with you. So honestly, I want to say thank you to SundaeSwaps for the transparency thus far. What do you guys think of this in chat? There's 188 people here. Thank you guys so much for coming. I really appreciate it. So I'm going to give my thoughts on this, and to explain it real quick, what they're essentially saying that SundaeSwap is going to have some congestion on launch, and it may take days for the orders to get through, and that the initial testnet environment will not be the same as the mainnet environment. And one special thing I want to focus on here is in this article, they mention orders per transaction. So in the testnet environment, they saw roughly 7 scoops per minute. Additionally, due to the lower protocol parameters, these scoops on average were only 3 user operations each. So what's very interesting about Cardano is you can actually include multiple orders or multiple processes in one transaction to limit the bloat on the chain. Of course, there's a limit on the amount of orders you can do at one time. But what's really cool is here's a good tweet from Rick. This is on mainnet right here, and this is using DripDrop's Firehose. You can actually compile multiple orders into one transaction and then submit it all at one time to save blockchain load. So when comparing TPS between 2 blockchains, a lot of people don't think about this. It's a bit more nuanced than people let on, the transactions per second. And if you look here, you got 22 UTXO inputs and 22 UTXO outputs, meaning that this is 22 different addresses that all of these tokens are being distributed to. And if you guys remember how a scooper works, you've heard Pi talk about it. So what a scooper does, and I'm a scooper, Bloom is an ISO scooper pool. We've been working on that on the testnet. So essentially what happens is a user, say you come to SundaeSwap.io. Once you're on there, you want to swap or even provide liquidity. And what you do is you swap, let's say ADA for World Mobile tokens. And then I, at the same time, swap ADA for Bison coin. So what happens when both of us go to do that swap at the same time is a scooper scoops both of them up and waits a certain X amount of time to then get all of these different orders and submit them all in one transaction based on, the total amount of orders in that time or the total limit that you can include in one transaction. So that's very cool. I know it's a bit complicated, but we're going to be going to an AMA after this. If you guys have any questions on SundaeSwap, on the ISO, how to earn Sunday, how to earn Bloom tokens, any questions you guys have on any of this information, even the complicated transaction stuff, we're going to be talking about that in just a second. But I hope that makes sense, specifically how the TXs work, and essentially that you can compile multiple orders together and then submit it in one TX. It's very interesting, and people that are getting really slick with this are going to be people that succeed in 2022. So pretty cool.